We've been pursuing this month a lesson dealing with stumbling over Jesus. We've noticed that people stumble over Jesus based on His divinity. They don't want to believe that He is and could be the Son of God. We have seen that people stumble over Jesus at His birth, that He really was born into this world, born of a virgin. Today we notice people stumble over Jesus and His resurrection. One of the reasons that I wanted to pursue these lessons on Christian evidences is because high school week at Rolling Hills Camp starts this afternoon. And we will be blessed on Monday and Tuesday to have a man by the name of Bart Warren. He will be there giving us 6 lessons, or 7 lessons, I guess, dealing with evidences for the things that we understand and believe. And so I'm excited for these kids to be able to hear this man whose real good work is done in this area. He spends a lot of time in it. He talks about it a lot. He writes about it. And he gets it well because of his father and his grandfather, who all also did the very same thing. And so I wanted to introduce the week with some evidences lessons. So today we think about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. There are many who deny and doubt that He actually did rise. There are many who propose various theories, many who say that He did, and many who say that He didn't. It's interesting to me that the Quran actually refers to this event. In the book Surah 19 and verse 33, it actually mentions that there's a statement there from the infant Jesus who makes the statement, "Peace be to me, both at my birth, at my death, and at my resurrection." A statement that said that it was going to happen. But later on in Quran, he makes another statement and says that the Jews did not kill Him. They only brought someone who resembled Him to make it look like they did. So on the one hand, stating that He did, on the other hand, in the same work, stating that it did not happen. This is familiar material for those who do not want to believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. There have been many theories given to explain alternatively what did happen. For instance, one of the things that's most popular is no one really knew where Jesus' tomb was. He was taken away and no one really knew. Yeah, there are some stories that others followed, but the truth of the matter is it was a secret burial, and so no one knew where He was, and therefore they could not prove that He did or did not rise. Well, that would not be without precedence, because God, the Bible tells us, buried Moses so that no one knew where he was, and yet God buried him. But in Jesus' case, individuals did. And to say that no one knew where He was buried wouldn't make any sense. A second one said, well, they knew where He was buried, but because of the time of day, early in the morning, when it was not yet fully light, they went to the wrong tomb. And they found it open and thought, oh, He has been resurrected. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because they had followed earlier to know where the tomb was. They knew where to go. And so to say that they went to the wrong one also doesn't make any sense. Another one says the resurrection of Jesus was merely a legend that grew over time. Wait a minute. Didn't they talk about it the same day? I think so. How could it be an over the time situation? Some have said that no, it was a spiritual resurrection, not a physical one. In fact, his physical body decayed. Think about that in just a moment. Others say his body was stolen. Well, that is in Scripture. That was something that the soldiers and the Jewish leaders agreed as the story that they would tell. And others simply say, he didn't die, he swooned. And the coolness of the tomb and the stone revived him. No one could go through what he did in crucifixion and have enough strength to come out of that tomb and move that stone. Furthermore, the soldier who pierced his side knew that he was dead. They didn't break his bones because they knew that he was dead. And to think that a Roman centurion or a Roman soldier didn't know what death looked like, impossible to believe. Seems to me, like with a lot of things with God, if you don't want to believe something, you can make up a whole bunch of stuff just to make yourself feel better. The truth of the matter is, Jesus was raised. Think with me for just a minute about the evidence that is credible. Not incredible, but credible. For instance, think of this. The announcement of the resurrection of Jesus from the dead happened in the same city in which he died and was buried. The same city. Peter spoke in Acts chapter 2, just 50 days after the death, burial of Jesus and his resurrection. He started in verse 29. Men and brethren, I declare to you that the patriarch David is both dead and buried, and we have his tomb with us even to this day. And then he says, being a prophet and knowing that God had sworn with an oath that by the fruit of his body, according to the flesh, he would raise up Christ to sit on his throne. He, foreseeing this, spoke of the resurrection of Jesus. His body was not left in Hades. His flesh did not see corruption. This Jesus Christ has raised up, of which we are all witnesses. You know those legends, ideas, the swooning idea, the stolen idea, the spiritual resurrection with a physical decay? Peter, right there, 50 days later, stood up and said, this is what we know. We know this. This happened. And therefore, in the very same city, if anybody there had said, wait a minute, it's a joke. There's been a mistake. They went to the wrong tomb. We will show you where his body is. The government was not friendly to Christianity. They didn't want it to succeed. In fact, they did all kinds of persecution trying to stamp it out. The greatest thing they ever could have done to stamp out Christianity was simply to lead a procession of people to the tomb where the body of Jesus still lay, and Christianity would have died right there. In the same city where he was raised, they proclaimed it, and no one could deny it. Think about that lie recorded in Matthew 28. Why was the lie told? Well, the soldiers were keeping watch over the tomb, as you remember, and during the night, a great light and angels came, and they were like dead men, and Jesus was resurrected. These soldiers came to the Jewish leaders and said, you got to help us. Oh, yeah. If these Roman soldiers let prisoners escape, you recall that would happen later when two men were in prison, right? And an earthquake came, and the guard was going to kill himself because that's how the Romans handled those soldiers who let prisoners escape. And in this case, the exact same thing. Your job is to keep him in the tomb because Pilate said that is, they're going to do something. We want to stop this. The Jews want us to protect him and keep him in that tomb lest something happen. They came up with the lie. They came up with the lie knowing it was a lie. Those soldiers, those leaders knew that he had been resurrected. And furthermore, it makes no sense in the first century to record and announce the resurrection of Jesus on the testimony of women. Matthew 27. The first eyewitnesses to the resurrection were women. You didn't do that in the first century. Women were not allowed to testify in court because their evidence was not accepted. Women think they have a tough time now. How would you like to be in a society where just any time you speak, you're not telling the truth? Whatever you say, you can't testify in court. And yet the first witnesses given to back up the credibility of the resurrection of Jesus were women. Therefore, they knew the facts were so true. It's just undeniable. Yes, that city where he died to proclaim his resurrection, anybody could have said, you messed up, but they couldn't because it was true. Number two, there was a seal on that stone. The leaders of the Jews were really upset because they had heard all of these pronouncements. When I die, 3 days later I will be resurrected. These leaders fought Jesus his entire lifetime. They tried to deny everything he ever said. They brought people in to try and trip him up. Lawyers were constantly asking him questions to say, are you this way or this way, trying to trip him up. And now they knew that if indeed he rises, we're in trouble. They didn't want it to be true. One time, in fact, after Jesus did a miracle, the leader, or the disciples did a miracle in the book of Acts, about chapter 4. They were tired of all this Jesus stuff. They brought those disciples in and they said, you got to stop. Stop teaching and stop doing. You see, they had had a private meeting, these leaders, and here's what they said. The fact that a miracle has been done, we cannot deny. But we have to stop it. We have to stop the spread of it. Notice, they can't deny it, but they got to stop it. That's exactly what that seal was about. We can't deny that it was said, but we got to stop it if we can. And that seal, under the penalty of death, if you break that seal, if you move that situation, somebody, something moved that stone and broke that seal. Yes, Jesus was resurrected. But third, not only was that stone moved, it was moved away. I chose this picture because it accurately represents, apparently, the most common way of doing the tombs of the day. The incline from the mouth of the tomb ensured that once the stone was rolled to the front, it would be almost impossible to move it away. It would take all kinds of effort to roll it back up the incline. The estimates are that it was a 2-ton stone, probably to keep grave robbers out. This stone was not, according to the language how it is written, This stone was not just rolled up the incline. This stone was moved away from the tomb. How could a swooned Jesus do that? Individuals who would get together, why would they roll it and throw it away? They could just roll it to the top. This stone, by power, had, as it were, been blown away from the opening of the door. And they were amazed, those women. Because when they went there that day, they were concerned, who's going to move this stone for us? And yet they saw it moved away from the tomb. That's because Jesus was resurrected. The text in Acts 2 clearly denies that his flesh decayed. Clearly denies that people did not know where it was. Clearly denies all of the theories that people have proposed. That one sermon on that one day in that same place took care of all of that. And listen what Peter then said. And we are all witnesses of it. Yes, you could actually go and talk to somebody who saw the resurrected Jesus. The passage read for us in just a moment ago listed a number of witnesses who had seen Jesus alive. In fact, why would he take the time to say 500 people at once saw him? Scripture doesn't reveal where or when that was, just that it happened. I think the reason is this: 500 people together are not going to have the same mistake. It really happened. They really did see him. And you could go interview in that first century any one of them. And if any witness said, oh, I didn't see him, they just made that up. The resurrection of Jesus is true. But what does it mean? What does it mean? In the first place, it means he is the Son of God. Romans chapter 1, Paul said that he is confirmed to be the Son of God by the resurrection from the dead. He is confirmed that way. It is true that he is the Son of God, and he's the Son of God proven by the resurrection, because no one but God could do such a thing. Number two, it says that all of us are going to rise. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 says the exact same thing, that everyone is going to be resurrected. We are going to be raised because he was raised. That's the importance of the resurrection of Jesus. A third idea is that there will in fact be a judgment day. He will judge, Acts 17, all people by that man whom he has appointed, having given evidence of this when he raised him from the dead. The resurrection says judgment day is coming. Fourth, baptism makes sense. If we are in the likeness of his death, Paul would say in Romans 6 and verse 5, we also shall be in the likeness of his resurrection. The old man is gone, the new man comes. Jesus died and was resurrected. Baptism makes sense. Therefore, baptism saves us. Not the removal of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience toward God. The new man, the new me. Baptism makes sense. It's the way in which we imitate the death, old man, burial in water, buried as Christ was, raised to walk a brand new life as Jesus was. We are in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus when we are baptized. Baptism makes sense. But finally, fifth, Hebrews 7:25 gives us everlasting confidence. The text says that Jesus Christ, seeing He ever lives to make intercession for the saints. His resurrection guarantees that I have Him as my aid and counsel and friend, constantly my lawyer on my behalf before the Father because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The resurrection is the most focal point of all of history. Everything prophesied about Him and about the church depended upon the resurrection of Jesus. And everything that has happened since, every message that has been presented, every person who has ever believed would have to wipe it all out were it not for the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. Don't let anyone tell you that whether Jesus was raised or not is not important. I recommend to you a really, really good book, small and easy to read, by a man named Philip Morrison, entitled Who Moved the Stone? Excellent book on the resurrection of Jesus. Today, we are who we are because Jesus was raised from the dead. And every one of us who have been immersed into Him have gone through the same process in a spiritual sense. Dying to self, buried in water, raised as Jesus was to a new existence. If that's not you, then today would be a great day to honor Him and to appreciate His resurrection by doing it as well, in order that you might find salvation. If you are a child of God who's become weak in faith, let this begin the launching pad for you to start rebuilding it. Can we help you today? If you need us in any way, will you come as together we stand and sing?